Nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, we love
Um,
those.
love the show.
Thank
The thing that really got me was giving birth. Maybe that's because I have a child turning 16 on Saturday, so I'm like a little
Wow.
reminiscent. But what was that like prepping for those scenes?
for the birth scenes.
Yes, so many pregnancies.
So many. Yeah, I mean, actually, did I do two births or just one birth? How many? Because there's so many
To
died. It's very
Oh well,
difficult.
and I haven't seen the whole thing. I've only seen 4 episodes, so
Okay, well, so yeah, I mean, well,
but
actually,
there is
like
birth.
there is birth, but for Catherine, I think the birth is almost a like it's traumatic as births are really are, but it's also traumatic because she really desperately wants it to be a boy, and it's a girl, and so it was almost I was aware of like prepping to play the kind of the like the horror and the sadness of giving birth to the wrong child as much as I was like the excitement of having a baby that lives. So it was a really like mixed, it was a mixed emotion day. But it was, yeah, I actually really loved that day. I got really into it. Do you remember? Yeah. It was great.
Well, you do get kind of into it when you have a baby.
But it is,
Takes
it's
over
something
everything.
like I really, really love getting to do all the physical stuff. And it feel like it just feels really liberating, I think, especially having spent so much time in corsets. So where it is just that day where you just have to like roar with your body, it's like really physically satisfying.
There was also a lot of births on set in general, wasn't
Yeah,
there?
everyone was birthing.
Pretty much every second day, it felt like some poor woman would walk by covered in blood while you're on your phone, Reddit or whatever.
Made you glad you don't have to give birth?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, very much.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. What is it like though playing those gender dynamics? Because I think it's so much about woman power. It's about the princess, but it's also about Henry's dealing with being with someone so powerful. I almost feel like he leans on it and then he also hates it in a way.
Yeah. I think that makes perfect
Toxic
sense.
masculinity.
It's
Yeah.
certainly like Henry was raised by women. You know, he was raised by his mother and by his grandmother, and his older brother Arthur wasn't. He was raised in the male household because he was going to be king. So you can really, it'd be very hard to tell Henry's story without, you know, involving women in a large way. So I think it's actually a more truthful telling of the story anyway. So it was very helpful that it was Catherine of Aragon's story, just because it had a more female-centric view of things. I think that is the way that Henry saw the world. You know, he had 6 wives. He loved women. He loved love. He might have had some issues there, but he definitely aspired to the perfect partner and really held women in very high esteem, I think, most of the time. Very high esteem.
Unless
very high esteem.
Jesus.
You heard it here.
I need to go back to the toxic masculinity, both hating and needing at the same time.
Yeah, that's the way I see it.
Yeah.
He really liked them.
Yeah.
They hurt themselves.
Yeah, of course.
Of course. Also though, it is kind of it's so sad with that baby boy at the beginning. What was that like playing that kind of grief? Because that's a very different kind of grief for both of you.
It was very intense. I'm not the kind of actress that can just like click in and click out, so I got very porous and it really sat under my skin. But actually I think that like at the beginning we were at least in it together, and I think that there was a kind of a sense of like feeling connected and held despite this like really overwhelming awful thing. And then obviously like as the show goes on and they pull apart, I just remember by the end feeling so lonely and so alone in it that it wasn't just that I was like going through this grief. I was going through this grief completely isolated while like you and Charlie Brandon were just like laughing at a feast and eating loads of chicken.
I didn't know you felt like that.
You did know that I felt like that.
You should have said something.
I did say something.
I didn't care.
Oh my goodness.
I didn't care.
You didn't hear.
Too high.
Maybe it was those babies crying on set.
Yeah.
Just confused everything. I was pretty blown away by how everything went this time. After last season ended with a lot of drama. How was it moving forward from that into like, I feel like it's kind of a hopeful place for you. How was that moving forward this season?
I think it's lovely to be able to, because this time around you really get to see their home life, everything they fought for, all the massive roller coaster of emotions they went through in part one. You finally get to see that the fruits of their labor have finally come together, and it's really, yeah, it's really lovely. I mean, some of my favorite scenes are the scenes that we do in our own little home and away from the palace and with our little family and things like that. I think it's really lovely to see healthy portrayals of relationships on especially in contrast to, you know, the crazy life of Henry VIII and Catherine of Aragon, you know. But yeah, I think people are going to enjoy seeing the other side of the palace life with us.
I thought so, because it does give you kind of this sense of normal, like, just because someone has money and power doesn't mean that they necessarily have happiness and joy and all the things you need to have a good life. Doesn't fix everything. So I liked that a lot about it. What's it like working with, well, there's so many childbirths in this show. What was it like giving birth? Do you have children, or was that?
I do not have children, and I was just, by the end of it, I was just like, do you know what? Standing ovation for women everywhere, because I don't know. I have never slept the way I slept that night. I commend women. Wow, there are no words. But yeah, it really just solidified in my brain that these bodies that we have are just truly incredible. We grow humans inside of our beings, and and it was tough, but it meant a lot to be able to portray that on screen, you know, because I think a lot of women are gonna relate to that.
I did. This mom did.
Yes.
I have two boys, not twins, but you know, you do.
Yeah, it's a lot. I mean, I commend you, right? Wow, it's a lot.
It was great. What was it like playing a character that leaves his wife and kids at home? Like, well, didn't have the kids. What's that like?
I think for me, it was kind of like art imitating life. So I did have a child in between part one and part two, and then I had to go away to work for part two. So I was like, I've got to leave everyone at home and go to work for a bit, and then come back, and then back and forth. And it was, I think, for me, I had a lot to kind of to go off from my real life. So I think it's hard in terms of the idea of it, because you kind of worried about how are they going to be and so forth, but then also you have your job to focus on, as Oviedo kind of shows in part two. So yeah, for me it was art imitating life, and I was like, wow, this is very strange, uncanny.
That is kind of odd, but kind of great, because you kind of could bring that in, I guess.
Yeah. I could definitely use all that as like pieces to inform my character, so it was good.
It's nice to meet you guys. Tell me what it's like to be, Laura, you're a little, actually both of your characters are kind of on the peripheral. Like everything's kind of happening, and then you're kind of these like sidewinders stories. What's it like kind of trying to get back in the middle? I feel like that's what you're trying to do. Maybe you're not, but that's what it feels like.
Do you know, sometimes I think for Maggie, she's trying to get away. She wants to get out of the center of the attention, because right where the center is the dangerous bit, in and around the king and queen. Which is why I think I always related to Maggie whenever I read these stories of you know, kings and queens. It's an incredibly dangerous place to be. What you want to be is someone they didn't write stories about when they had their head chopped off. So I think that's why I think Maggie feels like a lot of her family, her parents and brothers were murdered by the Tudors, and she's hanging on in there. But she now is sort of working for the Tudors, if you like. She's a lady in waiting to Catherine. And so, yeah, she's in that inner circle, kind of treading the fine line of trying to be true to herself and yet loyal to the king, which sometimes is difficult.
Well, you'd like to keep your head.
I like to keep your head.
Georgie, what is it like when you're kind of fleeing? Like, I feel like you're kind of on the edge of everything and yet kind of in the middle of it. What's that like? And being a mom?
Yeah. Well, I mean, Meg is in a different country for a lot of it. So, I mean, her storyline kind of functions as almost like there are so many elements that are similar to Catherine's storyline, but also they're very different people. So the decisions that they make, the choices, send them in very different directions. And I really love that contrast. But yeah, we worked really hard to kind of create the Scottish world as a completely new experience compared to the English court. And even with things like the production design and the costumes and all that kind of thing, and with a lot of conversations about the kind of atmosphere at court in Scotland versus England. And Meg is someone who inhabits both spaces, and so she's kind of seen as an outsider in both spaces. And it was really, really fun playing with that tension. It was really, really interesting arc that she has.
Well, and both of you lead your own story, and I like that a lot. Like, I feel like the woman is kind of you're both driving your own tale, and I think was really awesome. I assume that was fun to play.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah. I think that's true of all of the parts in the show, and I think that's something that Emma and Matthew, our showrunners, were really keen to give everyone a really like 360 world. You know, everyone is on their own path and not just in relation to, which is really satisfying in an ensemble like this.
Yeah, well, it's really fun to watch. And they're giving me the high sign, so I'm done. And it was very nice to meet you. I hope your junket day goes well.
Thank you.